Hello, my friends. How are you? If you are new here, I highly recommend you subscribe to our channel and hit the bell down to not miss a single one of our new lesson. And give to us some support by hitting like button. There is no doubt. Our lessons will help you to improve your English fluency. And good luck learning English. Lesson 4. Olaf reads another of his plays. Olaf, I have written another little play about those funny neighbors of mine, the Wiggins family. May I read it to you? Mr. Priestley, please do, Olaf. I am sure we shall all enjoy it. Olaf, here it is. Mr. Wiggins paints the sitting room. Scene, the sitting room of the Wiggins home. Grandma and Grandpa are seated by the fire. Enter Mrs. Wiggins with a paintbrush, Timothy with a pot of paint, and last Mr. Wiggins having some trouble with a large ladder. Grandma, it certainly is time this room was painted, isn't it, Grandpa? Grandpa, indeed it is. I hope the job's going to be done properly. As I always say, if a job's worth doing, it's ER. What is it I always say, Grandma? Grandma, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing properly. Grandpa, yes, that's it. You know, James, if it wasn't for my rheumatism I'd paint the room myself. Mrs. Wiggins, that's very kind of you, Grandpa, but James will manage, I'll see to that. You know, this is going to brighten up the room for you a lot. James, get up the ladder, and I'll pass the paint up. Timothy, oh, look. Daddy nearly fell off. Mrs. Wiggins, well, hold the ladder, then, Timothy. We don't want your father to fall, paint makes a terrible mess on the floor. Now here's the paint, James. Be careful with it. Grandpa, you've forgotten something already. You haven't stirred the paint. Mrs. Wiggins, I do think you might have remembered that, James. Pass it down again. Grandma, Grandpa never used to forget a simple thing like that. Mrs. Wiggins, now, here's the paint, James. Come on, make a start. Mr. Wiggins, you haven't handed me the brush yet. Mrs. Wiggins, Timothy, hand your father the brush. Timothy lets go of the ladder and passes up the brush. Mr. Wiggins, here, hold the ladder. I nearly fell. Mrs. Wiggins, that was your fault, Timothy. Timothy, well, I can't do two things at once. Grandma, you'd better be careful, James. You might get hurt badly if you fell off that ladder. Grandpa, a man who helped in my grocer's shop, broke his back falling from that height. He never left his bed again, poor fellow. Mr. Wiggins, well, here goes. How's that? Grandma, oh, what a terrible color. Surely you're not going to paint the room green. It makes me feel quite ill. Mrs. Wiggins, I know just what you need, Grandma. Timothy, go and put the kettle on, and we'll make Grandma a nice cup of tea. Timothy lets go of the ladder and goes into the kitchen. Grandpa, you're not holding the brush right, James. You won't get a smooth surface like that. Grandma, you always got a beautiful finish, Grandpa. Mr. Wiggins, here, who's holding the ladder? It's not safe. Mrs. Wiggins. Don't make such a fuss, James. Timothy is just getting some tea for poor Grandma. I'll hold the ladder. Grandma, you haven't done much yet, James. I don't know when you will finish at that rate. Grandpa, I expect it will be like painting the Forth Bridge. When they've finished at one end, they have to start again at the other, Grandma, at least they don't paint the Forth Bridge green. Mrs. Wiggins, James, your brush is dripping. Grandma, it's very difficult to clean paint marks off the floor. I've a friend who scrubbed for 2 hours at a spot of paint and couldn't get it off. Mrs. Wiggins, you must be more careful, James. Did you hear what Grandma said? Mr. Wiggins, a strange note in his voice. Yes, I've heard all right what everybody's said. Grandma, of course, Grandpa was always a very clean painter. He used to paint our grocer's shop from top to bottom, and there was never a spot to clean. Grandpa, the best looking shop in town, it was. Grandma, you used red and white for it, and very nice the shop looked. People never painted rooms green in my young days. Where's that cup of tea, Nellie? I need something to cheer me up with that horrible color spreading all over the wall. Mrs. Wiggins, Timothy, hasn't the kettle boiled yet? Timothy, nearly. Mrs. Wiggins, well, I'll go and make the tea. Mr. Wiggins, nobody's holding this ladder. It's moving all over the place. Grandma, you nearly came off that time, James. Mr. Wiggins, well, come and hold the ladder, then. Grandma, don't shout at us, James. We're not deaf. Grandpa, I suppose I'd better help him, though my rheumatism will be back for certain. Grandma, don't you do it, Grandpa. James will be all right if he takes a bit of care. Grandpa, no, I'll do it. I don't mind suffering in a good cause. I may be able to give James some useful advice. Mr. Wiggins, I don't need advice, thank you. All I need is someone to hold the ladder. Mrs. Wiggins, returning with the tea, now, don't be ungrateful, James. It's very good of Grandpa to offer advice. Now, here's your cup of tea, Grandma. Grandma, I must say I need it, too. Mr. Wiggins, here, Timothy, take this picture, will you? It's getting in my way. Timothy, isn't it a funny picture? That girl does look silly with all those old clothes on. Mrs. Wiggins, not so loud, Timothy. That's a picture of Grandma when she was young. Grandma, what did the boy say about me? Mrs. Wiggins, he just said it's interesting how fashions change, Grandma. Grandma, yes, indeed. No one would have painted a room green in my young days. And I must say James seems to need a lot of people standing round the bottom of the ladder helping. Grandpa always did the painting on his own. Grandpa, that's so. It's all a matter of knowing how to do the job. An army of helpers is quite unnecessary if you do the job properly. Mr. Wiggins, here, hold the ladder steady, Grandpa. It's slipping. Timothy, look out. The paint pot's falling. Mr. Wiggins, hold the ladder. Timothy, the paint's all over Grandpa. Mrs. Wiggins, James, why didn't you take more care? Grandpa, get this pot off my head. Grandma, if only it hadn't been green. Timothy, Grandpa's not just a grocer anymore. He's a greengrocer. Exercises. Exercise 1. Use the following words and phrases in sentences. Ladder. Deaf. Terrible. Drib. Stir. Advice. Brush. Bottom. Steady. Scrub. Hurt. Suffer. Smooth. Fashion. Fellow. Cheer up. Surface. Manage. Fuss. For certain. Exercise 2. Put in the missing prepositions. 1. Here's the paint, be careful, it. 2. You might get hurt if you fell, that ladder, a man broke his back falling, that height. 3. Timothy lets go, the ladder and goes, the kitchen. 4. You will never finish it, that rate. 5. It will be like the painting, the fourth bridge. When they've finished at one end they have to start again, the other. 6. I've a friend who scrubbed, 2 hours, a spot, paint. 7. He used to paint our grocer's shop, top, bottom. 8. I need something to cheer me up, that horrible color spreading all, the wall. 9. What did the boy say? Me. 10. Grandpa always did the painting, his own. 11. Don't worry. I'll see that. 12. Grandma was seated, the fire. 13. Mr. Wiggins had some trouble, the ladder. 14. He climbed the ladder till he reached the top. 15. Don't shout, us. Exercise 3. Put in question phrases. 1. It's time this room was painted. 2. You could paint very well. 3. That was Timothy's fault. 4. That wasn't Timothy's fault. 5. You're not going to paint it that color. 6. Your brush is dripping. 7. Your brush isn't dripping. 8. You haven't done much. 9. Daddy nearly fell off. 10. Your father didn't fall off. Exercise 4. Express in one word the meaning of each of the following phrases. All the answers are words used in this lesson. You are given the first letter of each word and the number of letters in it. 1. To move something round with a stick or spoon. S. 2. To make more cheerful and full of color. B. 3. Mistake, something for which you can be blamed. F. 4. A piece of work. J. 5. To succeed in doing something. M. 6. In the correct way. P. 7. To rub hard with a brush. S. 8. Used to boil water in. K. 9. The lowest part of something. B. 10. Without any rough parts. S. Composition exercises. 1. Tell or write the story of Mr. Wiggins paints the sitting room. 2. Tell or write any experiences you have had of painting, whether it was the painting of a wall, a door, or a picture. Or describe your favorite picture. Dear friends, thank you for watching our channel and learning English with us. Subscribe. And we wish you great luck in achieving your goals.